I see myself almost like a play facilitator, making art to help myself navigate and survive the world.
Do you believe in fairies?
Yes.
Yes. But it's not a fairy.
I paint and I work with installation and performance and animation and puppetry, whatever I fancy really.
I'm Lexi Strauss and I was born in Nottingham. I grew up in Yorkshire and now I live in Malvern.
I've been in Malvern for about 21 years now. Came here when I was pregnant and my son grew up here. I will walk up the hill every day. That action of walking, it opens you up, your thinking process and everything. There's one particular bench that I love, and sometimes we'll sit there for a couple of hours working. I recently got Arts Council funding to do some research into the relationship between trauma and humour, and that led me to training in clowning and fooling quite intensely for a few years.
Did you see that?
So clowns directly remind audiences that art is essentially about play and healing, and they break down these walls that have been constructed between the artist and the audience. I only began working with paint 15 years ago. I never really had the courage. It seemed very overwhelming, all of the kind of different components of colour. I really love that challenge of developing a new skill and working in a new medium, and that tension of the two things together, a new project concept with a new medium, that it's exhilarating for me. I thrive on it and it seems to be very helpful for me in my process. It just switches me on. I really love working with paint that's very fluid, very watery. It's a bit of a collaboration. It's like a dance with the fluid. That feels lovely, to not be totally in control. I worked as a florist a lot when I was a jobbing actor, and I think that rewired my brain to understand colour in a really lovely way, and it gave me the confidence, and I remember seeing colour in a totally different way after that. It's kind of quite a ghostly image of a female form. She appears pregnant with huge teats. When I first showed this image to my tutor at college, I think I was a bit naive. I didn't realise people would be quite, disgusted by it. And he was, and he thought that the nipples looked like hot dogs. It was a bit of a bonus, really, that it was so disgusting for people, that it got that strong reaction. I think what I was doing was trying to depict a disturbing sense that I had, especially as a young parent, of being valued for what one can produce or do with one's body in many different regards. It was a kind of physiological care from the larger society, but devoid of the psychological or spiritual care that I really desired. It's like a host having to put aside one's own needs always, for the guests, for others. So it's quite a complex image, but it's also very funny on some level. It's darkly funny. The Tupperware party, that was painted really quickly from found imagery that captured my imagination. I read somewhere online that men were able to lactate, but there's not very much research in this area really. And, you know, whether you think it's true or not, it is an astonishing thought regarding gender identity and division of labour. I'm really happy that the Women's Art Collection exists. It's unique. It preserves voices that are still very fragile in our society. I found that the particular voice that I was bringing when I was at art college 10 years ago wasn't very welcome back then. Feminism was spoken about through an even more patriarchal filter than it is now. The previous curator, Eliza Gluckman, was really supportive of me and my work from the start, and it felt so right, and I was so grateful to be able to have my work on display and to be able to share my work with the kind of audiences that I felt might most benefit from those conversations that I was bringing. It feels very lovely to be a voice along with those voices that I find so inspiring. It's the only work that I've got out in the world, essentially, and that's where I want it to be. Yeah, there's so many women that I admire in the Women's Art Collection. I love characters, you know, such as Maggie Hambling. She's gonna come into some kind of clown performance at some point, I'm sure of it. Tracy Emin, large voices, unafraid voices, very, very inspiring to me. And they're quite clown-like. They have that wonderful balance of vulnerability and strength, which a clown has to have. You know, the clown has to be certain, but it's also very vulnerable. It needs to be loved, but it's you know, it's important.